Hello, guys. How are you doing? I hope you are excited, as I am. My name is Elena Sinelnikova. I am a co-founder of two organizations, CryptoChicks, a nonprofit organization for education, and MetisDAO Foundation. MetisDAO Foundation building a Web3 economy and incubating startups that participate in this Web3 economy. And Metis Layer 2 is one of those startups. I joined the space back in 2016. And it took me a while to get sold on a blockchain. Before joining the space, I worked at the Canadian government and Canadian police, building highly available, highly secure, highly distributed, very auditable, so the audit trails of these applications was accepted in any courts in the world. So therefore, everything that blockchain had to offer, we already had it. So that's why it was so hard to sell me on the idea of the blockchain. Nevertheless, I was sold on it, and I was sold that I quit my very high-paid government job and jumped into that space. I'm very glad that I did it. But before I start telling the story further, let me get back to the main point, rollups. And rollups, that's what I'm going to be talking today about. Before I do that, please raise your hands if you know what the rollup is. Thank you. And raise your hand if you know the difference between layer 2 and a rollup. Thank you. What is your name, sir? Nice to meet you, and very good for you. And by the way, if you start talking about this on Twitter, layer 2 versus rollups, you will get harassed, as we did once. But don't hesitate to talk about it, because there are differences. All right, so for the rest of you who didn't raise the hands, I'm going to do a little education of what rollups are. And I'm going to give you the visual. So if Ethereum is a road, a rollup is a highway. It means that you can go faster and you spend less gas. That's the analogy, but how it works. Basically, rollups are processing transactions. So is Ethereum. But they're processing it faster. How it do it faster? It processing transactions in the batches. So just roll up the batch of transactions and save it into layer 1, which is Ethereum, as a one transaction. Therefore, the transaction cost gonna split across all the transactions, and it becomes cheaper. And because it saves all the whole batch at once, it becomes very fast. That's it. That's all rollups are. There are two types of rollups: optimistic rollups and ZK rollups. They process transactions in batches with one difference. Optimistic rollups saving the entire data onto layer 1, which is Ethereum, and zero-knowledge rollups just saving the proof. I'm oversimplifying here. Of course, don't harass me on Twitter about that. But this is the difference. In essence, they do the same thing, process transactions in the batches, and making the roads highways. Now back to my story. As I said, I joined the space back in 2016, but it took me a while to get sold on a blockchain, because I'm working for police and creating the same applications. They have the same features a blockchain had to offer. Sometime before 2016, my friend Natalia Amlin, who I know since the beginning of times, told me that her son got a summer internship. And the summer internships actually paid him not real money, but Bitcoin. And at that point, I said, what is that, Bitcoin? She said, this was a digital money. I said, it's not even a real money? No, it's a Bitcoin. I said, well, okay, child slavery. Fast forward a year, her son decides to drop out of the university. And then my eyebrow raised, how come? What's happening? Something is happening. Fast forward, her son decides to open up a new blockchain, Ethereum. It got me a little bit interested. I start reading about the blockchain, and I read about, oh, it's a ledger. Well, it's fun, but isn't just SQL database much more scalable? How this is going to work? Fast forward a few months, Natalia asked me to help her with the wallet. I said, well, Vitalik can't help you. Well, why? He doesn't know Windows. He's a Linux guy. I said, OK. And at that point, we started installing. It was a mist back then. We started installing, wouldn't install. We started reading about it. On the forums, there was not a lot of things to read about, but we still found the information. And I started digging into what blockchain is. And still didn't sell. And just one thing that I came across while I was reading, it was in one of the books, it was this one. That one is just the fact that nodes is stored all across the world on the people's computers, get me sold so much that I quit my daytime job and I jumped into the space, and me and Natalia, we created a startup to educate people about that. We went without money for a few years, just educating people about this very new, cool technology. It was so cool. This is democracy. It's built, even though, political parties across the world right now building this democracy in different countries, but this is already there. So that one sold me, and I still very excited about that part. And when we were teaching our first lessons in the Crypto Chicks, we were drawing this picture and telling, just imagine if leader of one country decides that these nodes are not permitted in our country anymore and close them down, what's going to happen to the whole blockchain? Well, if you close the 50 countries, still nothing going to happen. It is undestroyable. Even aliens come and bomb the planet. If only one node survives, we still have a blockchain. So this technology is undestroyable, and that's what is cool about it. This is what is different about it. This is what is making us live and thrive and survive in that space. This is the most important thing that we have. In case of rollups, it's vice versa. This is how rollups look right now. And that is very unfortunate. And that's why Natalia and I are still in the space with the MetisDAO Foundation building a decentralized rollup. Because the rollups that exist right now, and the rollups are Ethereum Foundation way of scale Ethereum. And that's a shame that we still have that picture that all rollups are centralized. All rollups have only one sequencer. And just recently, Renee here from Cello said that our industry is under attack. So, if I were still working in the government, this is how I would attack us. All rollups are still organizations. They all registered in the different jurisdictions. And it takes just one person and one law to bring down the sequencer. And voila, we don't have rollups anymore. Our highways are gone. And some of the rollups, actually majority of them, will not have an even way to withdraw the money. So the money that are in these rollups will be done. So this is a huge danger. That's why building decentralized rollups are so crucial for our industry, so important. But no worries, we're taking care of that. Oh, and by the way, aliens are still watching. And not only the aliens. Yes, we are working on decentralizing rollups, and we've been working up until since we started the layer 2, which was 2 years ago. There are two ways, in my opinion, there are two ways to build them. It's either consensus, where, and that's what I think Espresso is doing, that's where you come to agreement between all the nodes. This is not my favorite method because still with the consensus, we're going away from the consensus of Ethereum and coming back to consensus on rollup. It doesn't make sense because it's kind of like 2 plus 2 minus 2 still equals 2. And also the number of nodes are limited here. When you have a consensus, the number of nodes is still limited up until you hit that point when you have that scalability problem again. And by the way, decentralization of the sequencers also solved the problem of MEV and transaction censorship. By the way, raise your hand if you know what MEV is. Thank you. Yeah, MEV is manipulation with the transaction ordering. When you manipulate the price, basically, we just put transactions in order to get the favorable price. And also, censorship of the transactions is when you actually pick and choose the transactions from the pool. So the second method of decentralization for the rollup, and that's my favorite, is a pool. It's when the sequencers is the ones that are basically doing the processing of the transaction. And here, for the simplification again, I am uniting block proposers and within the sequencer functionality as well. Don't get harassed me on Twitter. So, decentralization via the pool is when the sequencers take in the turns when processing transactions in a random order, when they don't know which transactions to process and when, but they take in the turns, they process transactions, they go away, and then the next sequencers take in the turn. In this way, you can have an unlimited number of sequencers, and therefore the decentralization can be unlimited as well. And they will be restricted by the blocks that they create, by the time that they create the blocks in, and therefore there will be less opportunity for the MEV and the transaction censorship as well. And that's the architecture that we're using when we're decentralizing our Metis layer 2. And by decentralizing our Metis layer 2, we're of course going to open source this technology so all other rollups can decentralize. And that's the goal. So the rollups is going to be looking like that soon, I hope. Right now, we're ready to go into the testnet already with that architecture, and we're whitelisting the sequencers. So if you would like to be the first one among this technology, if you would like to have your own sequencer in there, and by the way, this sequencer have to be highly available, and of course, we're putting a reward on it, as everybody else in the space, because without a reward, our space doesn't work. So if you would like to be a sequencer, please contact us. And we add you to the sequencer pool if you're good enough, or if we match our offer. And of course, the pools are coming as well, so people who don't have that much stake can also unite into the pool and have the sequencer all together. But whatever we do, we must decentralize. Thank you very much.